Hey people, welcome to Sekou Style. This is your man Sekou Kesley. Today we're going to be talking about none other but Ahmed Sekou Toure. Again, before we talk more about Ahmed Sekou Toure, please, if you're new to this channel, you know what to do. You need to subscribe. Again, if you're already in the family, you know what to do. Share some love. Click that like button. Make some comments, share some love, alright? So the YouTube algorithm could get this video to many other people. That being said, let's get back to our man Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea. Now, what makes Ahmed Sekou Toure interesting, right? For me, not only his name is Sekou and my name is Sekou, so that's like one big right there, but nonetheless, he's from Guinea too, and you know, I have a connection with Guinea, so another dope reason. But on a serious note though, Ahmed Sekou Toure, he was a Pan-Africanist, one of the most underrated Pan-Africanists. He was the president of Guinea who stood up against the French colonial masters. He told them strictly, we, the Guineans, we prefer freedom in poverty than riches in slavery. So he didn't care about the French money. He didn't care about the opportunities that were being presented to him, right? He decided to do what? Ask the French through the Guinean people to get out of his country. They did a referendum, which means a voting. He mobilized his people. They kicked the French out, Guinea Conakry. He became president of the Republic of Guinea. Now, some people would say, you are talking about a dictator. You are talking about someone who was for one state party. You are talking about a socialist. Oh, you want to glorify him. Let me tell you one thing. As we start learning about our leaders, we start learning about our history, we start learning about what makes our people or our leaders at the time in the 60s, in the 50s, make certain decisions, we start appreciating the wisdom that they had. Yes, Sekou Toure wasn't without faults. I'm sure even my family was somehow directly impacted by his tough rule in Guinea. They had to flee to Liberia. Some of my uncles were targeted. They had to flee into Liberia. But putting that aside, you look at the philosophy behind what the man was, or who he was, what he stood for, the principles that he had as a leader. That's what we want to discuss. And that's what we want our children to know about. Not just the political narrative that has been given to you by the West. A dictator, or a person who was killing Guineans, people, someone who didn't want democracy, someone who, no, who made him that way? The French. The French were mad at Sekou Toure because he stood up against them. He kicked them out of Africa, and French felt like they had to control all the Francophone countries in Africa. French never left Africa. While Great Britain gave independence and left, France, on the other hand, they didn't want to give independence, and they never left. Up to today, you could argue, and I'm still arguing, that French is still in Africa. They don't want to leave. For instance, Mali, Ivory Coast, Senegal, right? They're still trying to get into Guinea. Burkina Faso. The French never left. But Sekou Toure made them leave Guinea. In response, what did they do? They undermine his government, send people to go kill him, send Guineans to go kill their brother. While Sekou Toure started uncovering all these plots and coups against him, they turned him into a paranoid person. He became paranoid because he didn't know who to trust, who not to trust. So he started doing what? Whomever he felt like you are suspect of, sign with the colonizers to come and undermine his government, he would get rid of you. Some people were innocent, but some were not so innocent. That's a fact. People may not like it, but it is the fact, right? He was protecting himself against a powerful country who used their might to bring in counterfeit money into Guinea, destabilize the economy. French was so mad. When they were leaving Guinea, they started burning even medicine. They started burning the Guineans' money. They started destroying things just so that to show the Guineans that they are mad. They also made sure that to make Sekou Toure an example of what other Francophone African leaders dare not to do. He stood up against them. They wanted to make him an example. Just like how they make Haiti an example. They use Guinea under Sekou Toure as an example that no African leader should ever dare stand against their colonial power. So today, that's what I want to talk to you about this man, Ahmed Sekou Toure. Now, we need to start teaching our young generation a different narrative. What he stood up for. Yes, he was mostly a socialist in nature because he believed in sharing the wealth. He believed in Guinea for Guineans, Africa for Africans. Some of his major Pan-African moves came when he gave Mariam Makeba of South Africa a diplomatic passport and a Guinean residency for her, a Guinean citizenship for her to be in Guinea when she stood up against the apartheid regime in South Africa. Also, when Kwame Nkrumah, the fathers of Pan-Africanists in Africa, when he was betrayed by his brothers and sisters in Ghana, he went to where? Sekou Toure, Guinea. Sekou Toure, under Sekou Toure leadership, Sekou Toure made Kwame Nkrumah co-president of Guinea. Right? Sekou Toure was so Pan-Africanist, not only did he make him co-president, when Kwame Nkrumah passed away, when the Ghanaian government and the people of Ghana started requesting for their deceased leader, Sekou Toure said, he laid out conditions that in order for Kwame Nkrumah to go to Ghana, they have to free political prisoners, they have to restore his dignity and take away all the bogus corruption charges that were putting on the man. Today, nobody knows none of these things. When you see Kwame Nkrumah pictures, or when you hear about Kwame Nkrumah, people just want to talk about the glory. They don't talk about the betrayal that they did to the man. They don't talk about people like Sekou Toure who restore him to bring Pan-Africanists to Africa. So today I want to talk to you about this man, Ahmed Sekou Toure. He is from Guinea. My mother is a Guinean. So I take this opportunity to talk about someone who never gave up on his idea of Pan-Africanism. Up to tomorrow, Guinea remains one of the core countries who stood up against France, although unfortunately after his death, things went the opposite way. The military took over, the French came sneaking right in, establishing their rules. Up to now, arguably, they're still around, manipulating the systems. But we need to remember a man who stood up against this colonial masters. A man who stood up for his people. A man who was labeled as criminal for standing up and taking charge and telling the people, enough is enough. French, we don't want you. We rather live in slavery or in poverty, free, than in riches by being a slave. Sekou Toure was such a leader. We need to teach our young generation about Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea. Thank you for listening. I hope you go do your research on Sekou Toure. He stood up for our Africans, for Pan-Africanism. Please do your part. Let's continue his legacy.